The Sith were thought to be extinct for a millennia, but Sheev Palpatine, aka Darth Sidious, was secretly working in the shadows to control the entire galaxy. More impressively, he managed to hide his powers right under the nose of the Jedi. So, from budding politician and secret apprentice to revived Sith Master and Galactic Overlord, Palpatine's powers are unmatched by almost every Jedi and Sith. Little is known about Sheev's early life, but starting at 10% of his power are his early political and apprentice years. Sheev was always very good at maneuvering the politics of Naboo, his home planet, but with the Force growing inside of him, his innate ability to manipulate and persuade people compounded. While the facts about how Sheev came to be a Sith apprentice are secrets that he took to the grave, it is known that he was the apprentice of Darth Plagueis the Wise. This is when he took on the name Darth Sidious and devoted his secret life to studying everything that the dark side could offer him. During his apprenticeship with Plagueis, Palpatine learned how to construct his own lightsabers, and with that, all of his basics were pretty much covered. Moving on to 25%, Palpatine slowly started solidifying his position in politics, and he continued training under Plagueis. During their travels, Palpatine collected art and artifacts that were connected to the dark side of the Force, and his knowledge of the Force grew exponentially as he carried out small secret missions for Darth Plagueis. After working together in accordance with the Rule of Two, Plagueis and Sidious decided to work together to try and manipulate the midichlorians so that they could achieve immortality. After Darth Plagueis researched the midichlorians for years, Palpatine reached 35% of his power after realizing that his master had already learned how to manipulate midichlorians to save the ones he loved. Plagueis conducted unnatural experiments to learn how to create life using the Force, and Palpatine learned about a process called transference. Transference was the process of transferring one's spirit and consciousness to another body. Essentially, this was the key to immortality. It was during this time that Darth Plagueis also exposed Palpatine to extremes during his training to make sure he was the best that he could be. Palpatine was taken to Megiddo to hone his skills in the Force while being exposed to the freezing cold temperatures of the planet, and Plagueis forced him to retell the story of the slaughter to Palpatine's family down to the smallest detail. It was through this training that Plagueis tried to extinguish any personal connections Palpatine might have had left that would make him weaker. At 40% of his power, Palpatine finally manages to secure his seat in the Senate, and he continues twisting everyone to his will. If you follow Star Wars Legends over canon, this is when Palpatine broke the Rule of Two by having his own apprentice, Darth Maul. Darth Maul was the infant son of the Night Sister leader, Mother Talzin, and Palpatine used this to his advantage to create a very powerful apprentice that would reveal the Sith to the Jedi. In 42 BBY, Palpatine met Dooku as a Jedi, and he would later recruit him to the cause after he left the Jedi Order to become a planetary count. With the manipulation and coercion of Dooku, Palpatine had reached 45%. Even though Palpatine had Maul as an apprentice, he used Dooku to infiltrate the Jedi organization to kill Sifo Dyas, hire the Kaminoans to create a clone army, and erase records of Kamino in the Jedi archives. At this point, Palpatine had begun to master the art of using the dark side of the Force to really cloud the minds of everyone around him, which made it very difficult for the Jedi to sense his presence even though he was right under their nose. While Palpatine was slowly working on his own powers and growth, he managed to get all of his necessary pawns in positions of power, such as Newt Gunray as the Viceroy of the Trade Federation, Poggle the Lesser to Archduke of Geonosis, and Grievous' transformation into a cyborg droid commander. Coming in at 50% of his power, Palpatine finally puts his grand plan in motion by orchestrating a huge war, starting on his home planet of Naboo. This was also when he decided it was time to reveal the power of the Sith to the Jedi, even though they thought the Sith was extinct. While Darth Maul was the main focus of the Jedi Knights during the invasion of Naboo, Palpatine managed to manipulate Padme Amidala so that he could rise to become the Supreme Chancellor. It was shortly after losing his apprentice and attaining the title of Supreme Chancellor that Palpatine killed his master, Darth Plagueis. Better yet, it was all at the same time that Palpatine discovered Anakin and the potential he had in the Force. At 60% of his power, Palpatine was pulling the strings of the universe, making the galaxy dance like a puppet during the Clone Wars. Not only was he controlling his own pawns, but he was manipulating the Jedi and Anakin on a whole different level. This is the first time that we get a glimpse of his combat prowess as he managed to defeat resurrected Darth Maul and Savage Opress. This is also when we get a good look at his powerful connection to the dark side of the Force as he uses Force lightning to kill his adversaries. Even in the very heat of war, Palpatine was able to conceal his secret identity with the Jedi constantly in his company. He also managed to recruit Count Dooku as a full-fledged apprentice who managed to master the same powers that Palpatine had showcased. At 65%, Palpatine showed that he could pull off a Force power only seen to be used by Darth Vader in his later years. After Master Cephadias' lightsaber was found near a distress beacon, Palpatine confronted Count Dooku about the situation, and he managed to Force choke him from a different part of the galaxy over a hologram communication. This sort of Force power at this distance is very hard to master, and Palpatine managed to pull it off without any issues. Prior to the events of Order 66, Fives goes to investigate the inhibitor chips that are present in all clones, and this threatens all of Palpatine's plans. Palpatine's mental capacity for fast thinking and planning ahead came into play here as he was able to orchestrate a whole attack on his own life that was staged to look like Fives had lost control and planned the attack himself. Not only is Palpatine able to stop Fives' investigation, but he's able to end his life and squash any questions about the inhibitor chips. This goes to show that not only his Force abilities grew over the years, but his mental and battle awareness as well. Once Palpatine reached 70%, he managed to pull off Sith sorcery with Count Dooku. At this point, magic close to this was only achievable by the Night Sisters, but Palpatine used his research from his time as an apprentice to Darth Plagueis. He also managed to use the Force bond that existed between Yoda and Dooku, since they were master and apprentice. And he threw Yoda into a Force illusion while he was at the Valley of the Dark Lords by using a Balk incantation. Palpatine continued to showcase his skills, and at 75%, he used Maul as a way to get to Mother Talzin. Palpatine managed to take out the Shadow Collective with Grievous helping to take out Mother Talzin, but it was his immense Force lightning ability that held her and Maul down. Palpatine ruled as the most powerful Chancellor in the history of the galaxy, and he continued to manipulate the Jedi and the Senate. It was during the time of Order 66 that we see Palpatine at 80% of his power. Not only did Palpatine use his Force lightning against Mace Windu and Yoda, but we got to see his full skill set with a lightsaber as well as he took out multiple Jedi, held off Mace Windu, the best duelist in the Jedi Order, and technically he bested Master Yoda during their duel. He used the Force to boost his agility during his duel with Yoda as well. His manipulation skills grew to an all-time high as he completely convinced Anakin that he could help him save Padme if he joined him as an apprentice. As Emperor of the First Galactic Empire, Palpatine's lightsaber days are pretty much behind him, and he's sitting at about 90% of his power. This is where his mental prowess and connection to the Force is what makes him a powerful foe. Fear and his powerful apprentice, Darth Vader, make Palpatine a leader that no one wants to disrespect, and he spends most of his time as Emperor as a powerful, behind-the-scenes force instead of a fighter. While he led with an iron fist, he also managed secret projects such as Project Necromancer, which would secure his lifelong mission to find the key to immortality. Palpatine is a living conduit of the dark side of the Force, and he uses this on multiple occasions while dealing with Ezra Bridger during the liberation of Lothal, where his holographic self is able to showcase his Force powers from across the galaxy. While Palpatine was never able to create elements from the Force, he was still able to manipulate them, like when he used pyromancy to burn a band of rebels who infiltrated his palace. Even though the fire was already present, the ability to bend the fleeting element to his will is enough to send any enemy fleeing, but these rebels weren't lucky enough to get away in time. Coming in at 95%, Palpatine, towards the end of his rule as Emperor, continues his amazing reign, but he's reached the penultimate position with his leadership and control of the Force. He never necessarily has to duel again, but he does take up his lightsaber to fight alongside Darth Vader when they're ambushed by the Crimson Dawn while investigating the Fermata Cage. He shows just how powerful and painful his Force lightning ability can be when he uses it on Luke and Vader, until his death in the second Death Star. One version of Palpatine the movies never show is the true power compared to Darth Vader. Even though Darth Vader defeats Palpatine on the second Death Star, we never get to see which one is more powerful than the other, But prior to the events on Endor, Vader actually attacks Palpatine on the steps of his citadel. It's here where we get to see just how well Vader's skills hold up against Palpatine. But while Vader attacks with his lightsaber, Palpatine is able to beat him into submission simply using his Force Lightning ability, proving once and for all that he truly was the most powerful being in the universe. A special version of Palpatine exists in the sequel trilogy that we never expected, but this version of Palpatine's story doesn't really make enough sense to truly rank it, even though his version was always meant to be Palpatine at 200%. Palpatine is supposed to be all-powerful at this point, but his weaknesses don't really support the claims. He had a powerful clone that held part of his essence in Snoke, but for him being a powerful successor, he fell for the old trick in the book in his apprentice Kylo Ren turning. Not only that, but Palpatine has some of the most extreme Force Lightning charges on Exegol. But he's easily defeated by Rey. While Rey is very strong and connected with the Force, it really diminishes the theory that Palpatine is basically invincible. Palpatine was overpowered on Exegol, but he was essentially retconned so the heroes could win in the end. Death can't stop Palpatine though, and he is even more powerful than he could have imagined when he reaches 100% of his power. Palpatine's essence passes on to multiple clone bodies that he spread across the galaxy, and it seems as though the people would never be rid of Palpatine. Clones are known to not be Force-sensitive, but after all of his extensive research over the decades, he managed to create clones that could house his Force sensitivity. They were so powerful that he was able to create Force storms that could bring down entire fleets. He was even able to convert Luke to the dark side for a brief moment, which is something that he wasn't even able to do when he was alive. During this time, he mentions that he's actually more Force energy than flesh and bone, which proves how his connection to the Force really does hold him together after death. In Biss, Palpatine is able to emanate so much dark side Force that he saturates the entire planet and his supporters that are present on it. Better yet, Palpatine continued his mission to create world-destroying weapons that surpassed the Death Star, such as the World Devastators and Galaxy Gun. Palpatine really was one of the most powerful Force users in the Star Wars galaxy, but hopefully they let him rest in peace as the absolute beast that he was in the original trilogy and expanded universe.